Hello. Today I want to talk to you about two stories of a swan and a handkerchief. Sometimes I believe that God makes something happen that wouldn't normally happen. Whether you call these coincidences or miracles will depend on your point of view. But when I experience or hear about one of these stories, I get goosebumps, and I believe that God is truly impacting in these situations. So I'd like to share two stories with you today. The first is about Corrie ten Boom. She was born in 1892 and lived until 1983. She was a Dutch Christian watchmaker who lived in Amsterdam with her family. And during the Second World War, she helped to hide hundreds of Jewish fugitives during the Nazi occupation. She was eventually arrested by the Nazis and was sent to Ravensbrück concentration camp with her sister Betsy. Sadly, Betsy died at the camp, but Corrie survived to tell her story. In a talk on fervent, effectual prayer, Corrie told her audience about catching a cold whilst living in the concentration camp. Her sister Betsy told her to pray and ask God for help. Corrie laughed. Betsy, however, prayed for God to give Corrie a handkerchief, a simple, practical prayer. After she said Amen, a friend arrived and gave Corrie a gift of a handkerchief. "How in the world did you know that I needed a handkerchief?" asked Corrie. Her friend replied, "There was a voice in my heart who said, 'Bring a handkerchief to Corrie ten Boom.'" Corrie continued, "Can you understand what a handkerchief tells you in such a moment? That there is a Father in heaven who hears it when on a very small planet, the Earth, one of his children prays for an impossible small thing, for a hanky, and that Father in heaven tells one of his other children, 'Give a handkerchief to Corrie ten Boom.' That is the foolishness of God. But the foolishness of God is the greatest wisdom, and I've learned so much by that handkerchief." Secondly, I'd like to talk about Arthur Dodd. Arthur was born in 1919 and lived until 2011. He served in the British Army during the Second World War and was captured in North Africa and spent most of the war imprisoned in a number of different locations. He ended up in Auschwitz III, otherwise known as Monowitz, prisoner of war camp. And he witnessed firsthand many of the atrocities that were handed out to the Jewish residents of Auschwitz. He survived and returned home to Northwich at the end of the war. Deep depression set in during his 4 months leave, and he found himself by the river in Hertford near Northwich. Colin Ruston's book, The Saboteur of Auschwitz, describes what happened next. 2 swans he had passed some distance back swam towards him, thinking some food was available. They soon realised that they were unlucky as the pebbles sank. He was throwing pebbles into the water. Both elegant creatures were pristine white, their grace and beauty making Arthur question his thoughts of suicide. One of them came out of the water and laid his head on Arthur's shoulder for a full minute or so. Arthur's initial response was one of apprehension, for his visitor's hissing anger was legendary. It was as though the swan appreciated Arthur's frame of mind, and the former Auschwitz resident was moved to tears. The swan eventually dropped back into the water, waggling its rear feathers as it glided back to the bridge. Both provisions in these stories were extraordinary in the deepest sense of the word, and I believe that they are signs that God is real and is concerned about every aspect of our lives. So I hope that you will be as encouraged as I was to read and hear about these stories.